You bottom dweller types are a perfect match for clunkers. A place like this is way out of your league. Just go home already. You're making the air foul." Her shrill voice echoed throughout the store. I felt as if everyone's stares were piercing through me, and I looked down. At that moment, my wife gently grasped my right arm. "Shall we go? Staying any longer will just be a bother." But contrary to her words, my wife had a gleeful smile on her face. "My name is James. I'm the founder and an actor of a theater company. We're pretty active with regional performances and have decent revenue, especially now that our lead actor is beginning to appear on TV and our name is getting out there. We're not super famous, but we're a reasonably well-known theater company. With about 30 actors and staff, we're small in size, but that makes us all the more close-knit. The old-timers in the troupe, including myself, were all members of the same college drama club. They're all great folks who love the theater to bits. Some of them even got so carried away with acting during college that they failed some classes and had to repeat a year. Well, I'm talking about myself there. On stage, anyone can become the lead role, anything at all. You could be a king or a superhero flying through the sky. You could turn into a fish, a lion, or even an alien. It's thrilling to watch this world where anything goes unfold, and I got really hooked on the challenge of bringing the most outlandish things to life in a realistic way. It was the early summer of my senior year in college. My dedication to theater was recognized and I received an award that made me somewhat known among students. I celebrated the victory with my friends, and it only pulled me deeper into the world of theater. And it was around this time that I got my first girlfriend. Her name was Mary. A beauty that lived up to her name's graceful impression. She'd spent 30 minutes every day setting her lovely chestnut-colored hair. I'm the type who sometimes goes to bed without even drying my hair after a shower, so I genuinely admired her for that. She owned several bags from well-known luxury brands that anyone would recognize, rotating them daily, and even her watches and jewelry were of the sort that would shock me with their price tags. Hearing her say, "It's amazing you won an award," made me over the moon. There was no resisting when such a cute and pretty girl tilted her head and asked me sweetly. I'd take her out to fancy dinners, buy her the gift she wanted. I never once thought I was just being played. I felt happy, even if she didn't show me much respect. But gradually, her attitude towards me cooled. This became apparent when I was busy with preparations for a theater performance. I hadn't been able to contact her much due to the busyness, and when I finally did, she wouldn't even look at me. To make matters worse, I failed some courses and had to repeat a year, which meant I lost my job offer from a major corporation. I thought being abandoned was inevitable. "James, all you ever talk about is theater. It's so boring. You don't have any prospects, do you? I mean, how many people actually make it in a theater troupe? For you couldn't even land a job, and now you're just declaring a life of poverty by saying you'll devote yourself to acting after graduation. I can't be with someone like that anymore." "But you said you liked me, didn't you?" "That was just lip service, obviously. I only approached you on a whim because you won some award and got a little famous. I thought maybe I'd meet some handsome actor, but I guess I was wrong. It's about time I call it quits, right? Call it quits. It means we're breaking up. I never had feelings for you to begin with, and it's impossible for me to continue this relationship, so, see you. Good luck with your little poor man's life." Mary said that without looking back. She walked away. Later on, I heard through the grapevine that she found herself a wealthy boyfriend from work. In the end, she never once came to see our performances. Despite repeating a year, I graduated from college and started a theater company. At first, it was just a few of us from the drama club, renting a small theater for our performances, but the tide turned when a handsome guy named Robert joined. Robert looked cool doing anything. Whether he was doing a fight scene, a love scene, or even slipping and falling. He just made everything look good. Our drab little theater troupe suddenly became glamorous. Robert's arrival brought a following of female fans, which started to bring in some money, and our troupe began to grow, getting offers from various places. We started to get more requests for regional performances, and our schedule got busier. That's when we needed to start thinking about the backstage and administrative stuff. My cousin's interested in the business side of the theater. Mind if I bring her around? That's what Robert said when he brought Patricia. Patricia, a theater buff who has always loved the arts, would travel far and wide to see various plays. Fresh out of college, she was young but knowledgeable and good at her job. And maybe because she was his cousin, she wasn't starstruck by Robert. Maybe having a handsome cousin gave her immunity. At any rate, I was impressed by her serious and hard-working attitude towards theater. Patricia always had her long black hair tied back, running around makeup-free. Her clothing was simple, mostly t-shirts and jeans, with little concern for fashion. Yet, every little thing she carried had a feminine touch, and every glimpse of her neatly groomed nails made my heart skip a beat. She wasn't treated much like a girl by the other guys in the company, but for me, she became the only girl in the world. It was a few months after she joined that we started being teased as the theater crazy duo. By then, it had become our routine to watch other companies' plays and discuss them over meals. We always ate at no-frills places like diners and pubs, but Patricia enjoyed everything so much that I just loved being with her. Our days went on like that, and naturally, we became a couple and decided to get married after 2 years. Some time after marrying Patricia, the old wagon we'd used since the theater company's early days started acting up. The engine would start, but the fuel efficiency had gotten worse. It made strange noises, and black smoke billowed from the exhaust. This calls for a replacement. I had bought it used for a steal about 10 years ago. It had over 125,000 miles on it. I remembered cramming it full of costumes and props, heading out to regional shows. It was filled with memories, but you can't make new ones if the old ones are holding you back. If I was going to replace it, I wanted something nice, so I splurged on a brand from a foreign country that I had always admired. It's a brand known for sports cars, but their SUVs are pretty cool too, and they have solid support in the States. So I called to make a reservation and decided to go to the dealership later. The clunker of a wagon still ran, despite the noises it made. And it certainly stood out in the parking lot of the high-end car dealership. All luxury cars in the parking lot, huh? Yeah, but were customers just the same? Patricia laughed in response to my comment. Our own outfits might have been a tad plain for a luxury car dealership. But we intended to buy a car, and we weren't just window shopping, so with some hesitation, we headed for the entrance. Welcome. As we walked through the automatic doors, a refined gentleman greeted us. I had a reservation. My name is James. Yes, please wait a moment. I'll check on that for you. As the gentleman bowed slightly and left, a woman in the dealership caught my eye, looking surprised. I recognized her. She was made up beautifully, wearing large earrings and a necklace. Her ensemble was glamorous but not over the top, fitting the upscale ambience of the dealership perfectly. She frowned and stared at us, then strode over decisively. Are you James? Mary, long time no see. I said with a smile, though she didn't bother to hide her displeasure, letting out a sigh. It didn't seem like a friendly approach. Why then did she bother coming over? Do you even realize where you are? You're not just here to look around, I hope. Her icy voice deflated my excitement. Unfazed, Mary continued. I'm the manager here. It's my job to sell cars to our clients. You do realize what kind of cars we sell here, right? They aren't cheap, you know. Yeah, I know. And I have a test drive booked. You're going for a test drive. I understand wanting to, but we're not so free as to offer test drives to people with no intention of buying. You get that, right? No, what do you mean? What I'm saying is, someone like you, without money, can't afford our cars. Mary sighed exaggeratedly, clearly irritated. You're still driving that old beater, and your clothes. Maybe you should dress better. And your girlfriend there, she's as plain as you are. Can't you buy her even one piece of jewelry? What a provider you are. Patricia at my side seemed momentarily annoyed. But she quickly returned to a smile, saying nothing and just gazing at Mary. Taking Patricia's silence as consent, Mary's voice grew louder. People like you belong in clunkers. A place like this is way out of your league. Just leave already. You're polluting the air. Her sharp voice filled the dealership. And I felt the stares of everyone inside. I looked down. That's when Patricia gently squeezed my arm. Let's go. No point in staying here any longer. It's just a nuisance. Yet, despite her words, she had a pleased smile on her face. As we left the dealership, Patricia began making a phone call. Yes, due to the incident, we'll be canceling our purchase. Thank you. Goodbye. I could still hear voices from the other end as she hung up, unfazed. If they call back to apologize, all is well. If not, we'll reconsider our options. A relationship with a dealership is long-term. There has to be mutual trust. That's right. It would be strange if they didn't call back after we canceled a $700,000 deal. Indeed, the SUV we were looking to buy, with all the options, came out to $700,000. It wasn't a cheap purchase, but we have been saving up and were ready to pay in full, something I had mentioned when making the reservation. But Mary probably hadn't checked. Patricia had called the dealership's main office in America. Mary would likely hear something from headquarters. But given her pride, I couldn't imagine her apologizing. Would the company even apologize to an individual like us? They'll come to apologize, they must. You should be more aware of your own influence. Patricia said confidently. I just tilted my head, puzzled. A few days later, as Patricia predicted, a top executive from the dealership came to our house with Mary to apologize. We're terribly sorry to have disturbed you at home. Despite your reservation, Mary here behaved inappropriately, causing offense. That's not it. We left because we were told to leave. We sincerely apologize. The corporate man bowed deeply, while Mary did not even try to hide her discontent. She probably wasn't satisfied. She had been disgruntled since arriving, looking around restlessly and frowning the whole time. The lady over there says that people like us aren't suited for your company's cars. Told us we belong in a clunker. Is that true, Mary? What a thing to say to a customer. At Patricia's accusation, the male supervisor looked at Mary in alarm, but she just crossed her legs, leaned back, and acted arrogantly as if she didn't care. Well, isn't it the truth? They might live in a big house now, but they're still poor people driving a beat-up car in cheap clothes. Do they even have the ability to pay? The supervisor seemed flustered by Mary's unyielding attitude. We mentioned during the reservation that our budget was $700,000. We're freelancers and prefer to pay in full rather than take out loans. $700,000 in full. Jess, aren't you the manager? Weren't you aware? Well, James here hasn't changed a bit since the old days. And what does that have to do with anything? I don't know what kind of relationship my husband had with you before, but now he is a well-known stage actor. It may not be a major field, but he has even performed on the stage of the Empire Theater. We can't tolerate such attitudes based on assumptions. Mary went silent, her complexion turning pale under Patricia's relentless words. Jess, yes, I was well aware. James, the celebrated actor of Grindhouse Theater Troupe. I love theater and have been watching your performances for years. My wife is a fan of Robert from your company, and we've been to your shows together. Your great acting skills and presence, your ability to captivate an audience as a storyteller, captured my heart. You've also guest starred in other companies and at the Empire Theater, haven't you? I always make a point to attend. So when I heard this story, it really chilled me. I wanted to come and apologize in person. Listening, I looked again at the business card he had given me earlier. It said Head of America Operations. Probably the highest ranking official of the dealership in America. It felt wrong to have such an important person bowing to me, and I hurriedly spoke up. No, I'm not such an important person. The head knows my husband. It's because of people like you who watch that we can do what we do. Thank you always. Patricia was all smiles, a stark contrast to her previous demeanor. No, anyone who has seen your performances would understand their greatness. The meticulously crafted scripts, direction, and the talent of the cast, all are superb. It's due to your character as the head of the company, isn't it? That's too much praise. I'm embarrassed. They say you are carrying the future of theater in America on your shoulders. I will continue to support you. Thank you. I was embarrassed by his words, but it was heartwarming to hear that our work resonated with someone who genuinely loved theater. But my success was not mine alone. Without my wife, I might not have made it this far. She has always supported me. Without her help, the company wouldn't have grown this large, nor would I have had the opportunity to perform on various stages. It's thanks to her, who has always put me and the company first, that we have come this far. I am truly grateful. James. I tried to hide my embarrassment by taking a sip from my cup. The bitterness of the cold tea seemed to cool my flushed face. You two seem to be a perfect match. It's clear you care deeply for each other. We came here to apologize, but I'm moved by both of your characters. I'm embarrassed by the narrow-mindedness and immaturity of our employee. Mary clenched her hands on her lap and didn't raise her face. Patricia and I exchanged looks and nodded. She was the one to speak. She always handled our external negotiations. Because I'm not very good at it. Your sincerity has come across. We haven't received an apology from the lady yet, but we will positively consider purchasing the card. Oh. And of course, please assign a different person to handle our account from now on. Thank you. Come on, Mary. You should say something too. I'm sorry. Mary mumbled in a low voice, still looking down. I couldn't see her face, but knowing her pride, she must have been chagrined. I felt a sense of relief looking at Patricia, who smiled back at me. Months later, we were ready for the delivery of our car. Thanks to the head manager's arrangements, we received exceptional treatment, with the representative coming to our house for the meetings. However, for maintenance after the delivery and to trade in our old wagon, we had to go to the dealership where Mary worked as a manager. Mary got a dressing down afterwards and was demoted from manager to rank-and-file staff. Now, she's on reception and tea duty. I think it's impressive she didn't quit and kept working. When we parked the old wagon in the parking lot and headed to the store, we locked eyes with Mary at the reception. She glared at us fiercely as she confirmed our identity, but still politely opened a glass door and said in a low voice, "Please come in." As we were led to our seats, Mary brought us coffee. "James, you're still dressing as drably as ever, you know. Ever heard of TPO? It stands for time, place, and occasion, dressing appropriately for the situation. If you don't dress up properly for this place, people might think you're a pua." Patricia and I exchanged surprised glances at her usual harsh words. Well, even after getting a scolding from the higher-ups and being demoted from manager, you can say such things. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest. And you, ma'am, wouldn't you look better if you put on some makeup and wore some jewelry in a place like this? You seem to have good material to work with, and with proper care, you'd look presentable. A wife's reputation can affect her husband's, right? With such a plain and unglamorous wife, I feel sorry for your husband. Mary, don't you think that's a bit too much? I prefer a modest and intelligent wife over a woman who's only interested in decking herself out. Everyone has their own values. Can you not impose yours on us? I was angry at her for bad-mouthing my wife and retorted a bit harshly, which seemed to surprise both Mary and Patricia, since I don't usually show that side of myself. What? Mary seemed at a loss for words, and just as she was about to back away with the tray, a commotion started at the entrance. A foreign-looking man was desperately trying to communicate something with large gestures. The staff were trying to help, but it seemed they were struggling to understand the unfamiliar language he was speaking. Didn't Mary major in foreign languages at university? Aren't you good with languages? I can speak Japanese, French, German, and Chinese, but I don't know that language. While everyone looked puzzled, Patricia chimed in. That's Hindi, used mainly in India. India? Yes, let me go help out for a moment. Patricia approached the man and began to converse. Though I couldn't understand their exchange, the man's demeanor immediately brightened and he began to speak freely. Patricia translated for the staff, and it seemed they were able to communicate effectively. Apparently, his car had broken down. When he was informed that it could be repaired, he was overjoyed and thanked us in broken English, saying thank you, thank you. This gentleman is a film director from India. You know, the kind of films where the king returns and defeats the villains. The one where everyone dances at the end. That was fun. It had so many outrageous scenes, yet the story held together and ended on a high note. We couldn't make such a film in America. I shared my thoughts with Patricia, who relayed them to the director, who then enthusiastically offered me a handshake. He must be a well-known figure in India. But his down-to-earth nature suggested that his film sets must be fun. Patricia and the director talked further. I couldn't understand the words, but it felt like they were discussing me. I couldn't leave my seat as I watched them when suddenly the director stood up and reached for a handshake. Thank you, please. What? Oh, yes, what does that mean? Patricia was grinning. The kind of smile she has when she's up to something. I had a bad feeling, but I couldn't let go of the director's hand and tried to smile ambiguously to hide my confusion. Unbeknownst to me at the time, Patricia had been recommending me for the lead role in the director's new film set in America, claiming I'm a famous actor from America. My bad feeling was spot on. The lead role in an Indian movie meant I had to learn to dance. It led to days of hellish dance lessons before the shoot. After dancing every day until the soles of my feet peeled and my knees and back were sore, I somehow finished filming and became an overnight sensation when the movie was released. Just being an American actor in an Indian movie was newsworthy, but for some reason, America went crazy for me dressed as Native Americans dancing to Indian music. Dance covers started popping up on social media and spread like wildfire. Soon enough, a sequel was greenlit. I'm still surprised by this turn of events, but Patricia seems quite pleased. My husband is the most wonderful man in the world. He deserves to be seen by everyone. I'll support him wholeheartedly for that. Saying this, she was grinning as always. Mary left the company soon after. Rumor has it she decided to study languages more and went to study abroad around the world. Determined, she cut her hair short, and I heard from the dealership staff she looked like a completely different person. After seeing me dance in the center of an Indian movie, she said, "I can't support him to that extent. I'm totally outdone." Well, most people probably couldn't follow their spouse to India to do translation and support. I'm just grateful for my wife. On one day off, Patricia and I went for a drive in our new car. It's quiet, stable, and extremely comfortable to ride in. Easy to drive. I'm truly glad we bought it. Despite some troubles, it all led to a great opportunity, and I think it all turned out well in the end. All because my wife was there beside me. It's been tough up till now, but I'm really glad you were with me. What's this all of a sudden? I just felt like saying it. Looking forward to spending more time with you. Same here, and not just me, but this little one too. Patricia's words made me widen my eyes in surprise. She pulled out a pink booklet from her bag. It was a maternity health record book, and I hugged her tight, overwhelmed with emotion. Thank you, I'll cherish you both for life. Yeah, I hope we can add more to our family. Let's live every day with joy. I look forward to the future with Patricia. Maybe we'll drive this car on family trips and camping. Surely, days filled with smiles await us. And for that, I want to cherish her more than ever, to make her happy. That's what I wholeheartedly feel. Sigh. I just can't stop sighing. I was on the verge of quitting my job when I was hit with an unbelievable situation. In my hands, I had a photograph from a matchmaking service. In it was a fair-skinned, beautiful woman. The other day, I was suddenly called into the CEO's office, trembling. I wondered what it was about as I went to listen. The CEO of a company we do business with wants to consult you. You know Mr. Johnson from the printing company. He has proposed a match for you with his daughter. Excuse me, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of course, I didn't know Mr. Johnson all that well. I had been invited by our CEO to play golf with him a few times, and we had only chatted a little. Why me? What for? I was filled with nothing but these thoughts. Mr. Johnson's company is a fairly large corporation. A match with the daughter of such a distinguished company CEO seemed impossible. With all due respect, I've had to check with him several times. They definitely want to arrange a match between you and his daughter. No way. While in disbelief, I took the envelope that contained the daughter's photograph. That night, I called my mom back home to talk about it. Well, isn't that a fine offer? Why don't you meet the lady at least? Yeah, but I'm thinking of turning down the matchmaking. I see. I'm sorry. It's because I've become like this. It can't be helped. It's not your fault, Mom. It's just age. I plan to quit my job soon and return home. The reason is that I need to take care of my mother, who has a chronic illness. Fortunately, I have knowledge related to programming. I think I can make enough for living expenses even if I work from home. We'll make do. But Mom seemed unconvinced. But I can't bear to leave my frail mother alone at home. That's why I decided to move in with her. The next day, after returning from the office, I was walking to the convenience store near my house to buy dinner. Then, on a dimly lit side street I passed by, a woman was being hassled by a young man with a delinquent look. Hey, you bump into me and don't even apologize. What's that about? What's wrong with you? Why should I pay you and apologize when I didn't even bump into you? Hey, that girl is. I recognized the woman's face. On impulse, I called out to her. Kayla, long time no see. Hey, remember me, the attorney, Charles? We worked together on that case, remember? Oh, Charles, it's been a while. The woman responded to my words, perhaps catching on to my intent. Damn, some nosy guy showed up. Perhaps it was a mention of an attorney, but the man quickly left the scene. Are you okay? Yes, she answered in a faint voice, looking exhausted. I am. Yes, I recognized your face. You're Charles, my matchmaking partner, right? Yes, that's right. An awkward silence filled the air. She was unmistakably my matchmaking partner, the daughter of the client's CEO, Kayla. Why were you wandering around in such a place so late at night? After that, I had invited her to my place. If we had just stood there talking, that guy might have come back and done something. That's what I thought. I got lost, she stuttered. You didn't come here to subtly check up on me, did you? Her face turned startled for a moment before she continued. Yes, actually, that's true. At her words, I let out a big sigh. She must have been told by the CEO, her father, to suddenly have a matchmaking date with me. I understand being curious about a match arranged by your parents, but there's no need to come scouting out at this time of night. No, actually, I had a fight with my father about the matchmaking. Yes, a delicate air flowed between the two of us. If you don't like it, I think we could both go and turn it down. What do you think? No, I don't dislike the idea of matchmaking, but it seems like you're not keen on it. She looked down dejectedly. I let out a big sigh and told her that I had intended to decline the matchmaking and that I was planning to quit my job and return home soon. What? Quit your job? It's not that there's a problem with my current job. It's just that there's nothing I can do about it. I can't leave my sick mom alone any longer. I understand, she replied sadly to my words. I wonder what she's curious about, having only met me today. Even if it was the CEO's sole decision, it's not nice to just unilaterally call off a matchmaking, right? When I conveyed that, she said something unexpected. No, that's not it. I was actually looking forward to this matchmaking. But my father told me that you might not be interested, and I just couldn't sit still. So you came to check up on me. She nodded shyly, looking embarrassed. I was at a loss for words. I can start a relationship with her considering my future plans. And yet, this might hurt her feelings. I'm sorry. My father was being pushy. I'll tell him to call off the matchmaking from my side. No, but she looked up with a sad face, and I was at a loss for words. Actually, this matchmaking, I pretty much asked my father for it. What? Don't you remember? We've met a long time ago. As she spoke, she took out her cell phone from her bag, but then she looked at the time and said, "Oh, it's so late. I really must go home now. Can I call a taxi? It's rude of me to be here at your place at this hour, and I'm sorry for any trouble I've caused." Sure. After that, a taxi arrived quickly, and she went home. Still, she said something strange. Where have we met before? To be honest, I only knew her from the matchmaking photo. Looking at her picture again, I was thinking with my mind racing. I just don't recognize that face. No matter how much I looked at her face, I couldn't remember. Then, my eyes landed on her ears in the photo. She was wearing cute earrings. Oh, I remembered something. But that was over 20 years ago. Could she be the girl from back then? As unlikely as it seemed, I decided to accept the matchmaking and verify it for myself. On the day of the date, when she arrived at the appointed upscale restaurant, I caught my breath at the sight of her. She was fitting for a CEO's daughter, with her fair skin and a gentle appearance. I can't believe you agreed to come. She blushed slightly and smiled happily. There's something I wanted to check with you. You're Kay, right? You finally remembered. Her face lit up with a smile. She was indeed Kay, my childhood friend. It's hard to believe. We haven't seen each other in over 20 years, right? Yes. Back in the day, she used to live near my family home. Her parents were often busy with work, and the neighborhood ladies and my mom looked after her. She ate at my house several times. Looking through photos my dad took, I saw you in one from when we went golfing, and I recognized you right away, but my dad didn't notice at all. When I told him that man was definitely Charles, he seemed to remember the past. I had been deceived by someone I was dating with the intention of marriage, and I had become distrustful of men for a while. But seeing that photo made me want to see you again, and I half-jokingly said that maybe I could marry you. I see. So your dad took it seriously then. She gave a wry smile. It seems her father, desperate for a good match for her and not finding any, seriously set up the matchmaking with me. But I really am thinking about marriage. Looking at her smiling face, I felt gloomy. I have plans to quit my job to take care of my mother at our family home. I don't even have another job lined up. I'll be without an income. If I were a father, I wouldn't allow my daughter to marry a man in such a situation. I will take good care of your mother, so can't we invite her here to stay with us? What? To have you take care of my mother right after getting married? I owe her since I was little. She took care of me. I would like to return the favor," she said, bowing her head. "Please, let's continue our relationship. I've been troubled for so long, not meeting the right person. If I miss this connection with you, I feel like I'll never meet someone good for the rest of my life." Kayla, looking at her bowed head, I was speechless. The thought of her being chased by the duty of caring for my mother right after marriage pained my heart. "But I can't let you go through such hardships. I'll be fine. Let's invite your mother here and live together, the three of us." "Are you serious?" I was overwhelmed by her statement. "I'm not young anymore. I'm ready for that level of commitment." Her determination seemed firm. But what would Mr. Johnson think? A daughter going off to marriage, only to spend her days immersed in caregiving at her new home. Knowing this before the marriage, could a parent happily send off their daughter? Seeing my troubled face, she said, "Is caregiving really such an unpleasant thing?" Her question caught me off guard. "My father will one day need care too, and someday I will as well. I think it's just part of life." Kayla's words struck me like a blow to the back of my head. That's true, but caring for someone else's parent is harder than you might imagine. I was cared for by your mother. I ate the food she cooked for me, even though I was someone else's child. It's the same thing. Her honest words swayed my heart. It's a thank you. Think of it as thanks for your mother. And do you remember this? Saying that, she touched the sparkling earrings by her ears. They were a pair with two overlapping heart motifs, which my father once said he had given to my mother as a present, and she had always worn them as her favorite. When I would gaze at them because they were so sparkly and pretty, your mother gave them to me. "Wear them when you're older," she said. "I only have a son, so I can pass them on," she told me while laughing. I remember that moment well. The reason I realized that she was Kayla, my childhood friend, was because I saw those earrings, which my mother had given her. I understand, let's consider it, taking my mother's opinion into account as well. Really, thank you so much. And that's how Kayla and I began dating. Both the CEO and my mother said the same thing, that they could finally relax knowing their child found a good person. It reminded me that all parents feel the same about their children. When I told my mother about living together with Kayla, she hesitated at first, saying she didn't want to interfere with the young couple and even suggested moving into a nursing home. But Kayla insisted that we should live together, and eventually, my mother agreed. And so, our life together as three began. Kayla has been taking great care of everything, from household chores to accompanying my mother to the hospital. I can only feel gratitude towards her. My mother seems so happy to have a companion. She smiles much more now than when she was living alone. "Hey, what kind of design do you think would be good for a wedding ring?" "Well, maybe we should ask my mother too." "Yes, let's talk about it during dinner." The conversation for tonight's dinner was set to be about the wedding rings. Next month, we're having our wedding. I can already imagine Kayla's father crying at the ceremony. I smiled to myself at that thought. I've landed a job at a publishing company and have been there for 10 years. I became a section chief in the sports newspaper department and got married 2 years ago through an office romance. Just when I thought everything was going smoothly, something unexpected happened. One morning, as I arrived at work, my boss approached me with a smug grin. I can't stand this guy. He lives to nitpick others, sniffing out the slightest mistakes to report to our manager, Keith. It's hard to tell if he's here to work or just to find fault with others, as he hardly does his usual job. I don't know why such a person holds the position of section head. And today, as usual, he comes up smirking. "Hey, Ethan, Keith wants you in the first conference room." "Got it," I replied, and headed straight for the room. I knocked on the conference room door and heard Keith's voice. "Come in." "Excuse me." As I opened the door, the heads of the sports department and the HR department looked at me. First, Keith asked me, "Ethan, do you know anyone at Johnson Publishing?" I had no idea, so I said, "No, I don't." Then Keith dropped a bombshell. Our exclusive scoop on Mike, a pro baseball player's move to the majors, was published as a scoop by Johnson Publishing. No way. I had spent days in a bar that Mike frequents to get that scoop. How did it get announced as Johnson's scoop? "Chuck says you've got a friend from your university working at Johnson Publishing, right? Could it be? Am I being suspected of leaking information to an employee of Johnson Publishing from my alma mater?" But Keith, I really have no clue. I didn't even know about the employee from Johnson Publishing you're mentioning. I wouldn't just hand over a scoop I worked on for months to another company. I explained, but Keith's expression remained stern. Then the HR head, Jonathan, told me, "With Chick's testimony, we can't just take your word for it 100%. Until the dust settles on this leak, you're assigned to work at a regional branch." I couldn't believe my ears. A regional branch, in a place without a pro baseball team. And there's only a slim chance they even have a pro game once a year. At least there's a high school baseball team that's a regular at the Nationals, so maybe I can write about that. But this is clearly a demotion. And so, I was transferred to the regional office from the next week. Coming back from the meeting, as expected, Chuck approached me. "So, Ethan, you're going to be the head of the sports section at the regional branch. Wow, congrats." I glared at Chuck. "Why did you make up such a lie?" "It's no lie. Todd from Johnson Publishing. He's your junior from university, isn't he? It's not wrong. Haha. I don't know a Todd at Johnson Publishing. I don't even know if he's from the same university. I have no acquaintance with him at all. Stop spreading rumors." As I said this, Chick's grin grew wider. "I just stated the facts. It's not my business how the higher-ups decide." That's when I realized I have been set up. He intentionally hinted to Keith that Todd and I went to the same university, suggesting some connection. And he pinned the leak on me. This is nonsense. But getting angry won't change the facts. I'm being transferred. When I got home, I told my wife, Michelle, about it. She was shocked. "What? The countryside? Starting next week? Isn't that too sudden?" "Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I'll be able to return to the headquarters after a few years, but as long as Chuck is in the sports department, it might be hard to come back." For a while, Michelle just sat there thinking. And then she said something unbelievable. "Let's get a divorce." "What? What do you mean? Get a divorce?" Then Michelle, with a cold expression I'd never seen before, said, "Because I just can't stand the idea of living in the countryside. Leaving New York is out of the question." "So, you want me to move alone?" Her reply was even more astonishing. "Move alone? No, I mean divorce. Divorce. A demotion with no guarantee of return to headquarters means your career's over, right? There's no point in staying with someone who's got no future." Everything went dark in front of me. Is divorce really considered this easily? Just for falling off the career track? I married you thinking you were promising and secure since you became a section chief in your 20s, but being banished to a country branch, unbelievable. That made it clear. Michelle didn't love me for who I was. She married the title of a young section chief at a major publishing company, likely on the fast track to success. After hearing Michelle's cold words, my feelings cooled off fast. I didn't feel like trying to make her stay or convincing her otherwise. We really did become strangers again, just like that, with a single piece of paper. After that, I packed up my things within a week and moved. On the evening I moved my stuff into my new apartment, I decided to head to the supermarket, a 10-minute walk away, to grab some dinner. At the prepared foods section, I picked up some pizza for dinner and some pastry for breakfast the next morning. When I left the supermarket, it started to drizzle. The rain quickly turned into a downpour. Felt like a squall coming. By the time I got to my new apartment, my hair and shoulders were pretty wet. As I hurried inside, I noticed someone in the alley next to the building. Someone was crouching down. "What's that?" I approached and saw a drenched woman sitting there. She might be ill. I hurriedly asked her, "Hey, are you okay? Are you feeling sick?" The woman slowly lifted her face. She was pale, her eyes vacant. "This is bad. Should I call an ambulance?" "No, first I need to get her inside." "Hey, I live on the 3rd floor of this building. There's a laundromat on the 1st floor. Want to dry off your wet clothes? You'll catch a cold like that," I offered. I'm not a weirdo or anything. Here's my business card." She took the card, looked at it, glanced up at my face with a start, then nodded emotionlessly. At the entrance, I handed her a towel and some sweatpants and a hoodie, and showed her to the bathroom. "Take your time changing. Feel free to use the shower," I said, closing the bathroom door. After a while, the woman came out. "Thank you, I'm sorry," she said, bowing her head. "No, are you feeling all right now?" "Yes, I'm sorry to worry you. It was just a little fainting spell from anemia," she replied. I made some coffee and we chatted as we drank. I introduced myself, mentioned I'd just moved in that morning, and that I'd be starting work at the publishing company the next day. To my surprise, she said she worked at the same company. "My name's Samantha. I guess I'll be working under you, Ethan. I'm in charge of accounting." "Wow, really? I'm surprised we're at the same company. It's nice to meet you. I just moved in, so I don't really know anything yet." After that, she shared more about the company, and we made small talk. She seemed to relax knowing we worked at the same place, and she opened up quite a bit, so I decided to ask something that had been on my mind. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but why were you in that alley?" "Yes, I've actually been dealing with a stalker." "A stalker?" Samantha explained that she had been harassed by a stalker for several months. Even today, she felt she was being followed from the station. She had reported it to the police before, but they said they couldn't take action without evidence of a direct attack or similar harm. Today, just a few yards from her home, someone tried to grab her arm, so she threw her umbrella at the stalker and ran into the alley. That must have been scary. As Samantha's face grew dark recalling the event, I made a suggestion. "If it's okay with you, would you like to walk home together starting tomorrow? I can escort you from the office to your house since it's nearby." Her face lit up instantly. "Really? That would be so helpful. Thank you so much." Samantha thanked me repeatedly, looking relieved. The next morning, I went to the branch office bright and early. The floor housed the sports, economy, society, entertainment sections, and also the general affairs and accounting departments. The branch had a completely different atmosphere from the headquarters. Every employee worked efficiently, cooperating to avoid overtime as much as possible. It seemed like this is how companies should be. When I peeked into the accounting department, I saw her face. Just after the end of the day, I approached Samantha, and we left together. That evening, we had dinner at a restaurant she recommended, since she was a local. From then on, we ate dinner together every night. I feel kind of bad, making you walk me home every day. While enjoying some delicious seafood at a place she suggested, Samantha said apologetically, "Nah, it's fine. I'm grateful for the good company and great food in a town I'm still getting used to." She smiled warmly at my response. We spent every evening together, sharing stories about our lives. She had divorced a few months ago after her husband had an affair. Soon after becoming single, She started seeing the same guy at her local convenience store, and eventually, he began following her and harassing her. She was genuinely scared when we met, and she was thankful to have someone to walk home with. On our days off, we started going out for meals together, and she showed me around to the stores with the best deals and the tastiest deli food. Gradually, I began to develop feelings for this incredibly kind woman. This went on for about a week. One day, after work as usual, I walked Samantha to her apartment building. As she entered the entrance and I was about to leave, I heard a woman scream. Could it be the stalker? I thought he had given up following her. I rushed back at full speed and burst into the entrance of her apartment building. There, in front of me, was Samantha being embraced by a man in a black hoodie. "Hey, what do you think you're doing? Get away from her!" I shouted as I twisted the man's wrist, causing him to kneel and fall. I put both of the man's arms in a tight chokehold and said to Samantha, "Call 911. I shouted. "If you come near her again, I won't go easy on you." I grabbed the man by the scruff of his neck and threatened him. Minutes later, the police arrived and arrested the man, who was found to have a stun gun and a box cutter in his pockets. "Thank you so much," I comforted the trembling, crying Samantha, assuring her it's all going to be okay now. The stalker would probably be locked up for a while. But Samantha seemed deeply affected. "I'm scared to enter my apartment alone from tomorrow." She started crying as she spoke through her trembles. I reached out to the real estate agent for my apartment building. They mentioned there were 2 vacancies at my apartment now. "Samantha, it's a bit cheaper compared to here, but there are empty apartments in my building. How about moving in?" I suggested. "So, does that mean I'd be coming home to the same place as you, Ethan?" She looked me straight in the eyes as she said it. "Yeah, if you're in the same building, I can make sure you get home safely every day." Her face brightened with a smile as she said, "Please, introduce me to the real estate agent." That weekend, the whole office helped with Samantha's move. The newspapers had run a story titled "Hero from New York Thwarts Stalker," so that became the talk of the day during the move. It was good to see my martial arts training from my student days come in handy. Since moving into the same building, Samantha started bringing over stew she had made in excess, saying she'd made too much. I've got this subtle feeling that a romantic sentiment is starting to sprout between Samantha and me. Neither of us has said anything about it yet, but I really enjoy the time I spend with Samantha now. Being demoted and then divorced before coming here, I was honestly just shocked, but now, I think it was all part of the right course of events. Word on the street is that my ex-wife has been making advances on Chuck, and when Chick's wife found out, it caused a scandal, leaving Chuck out of the company and my ex-wife in a mess with a lawsuit. Hearing that, I couldn't help but think, well, karma's a thing. I'm about to make a fresh start here. And I'm determined to never let Samantha go through such fear again. I want to protect her smile. I never imagined the future would turn out like this. Life is really fascinating. When I was 10, my parents passed away in an accident. My dad was a fisherman of few words, and my mom had the kind heart who supported him. One night, unusually, they both went out on the boat and it capsized. They never returned. I was just a little kid then, and I was taken in by my grandmother, Harriet, and became her adopted child. That was a date. Your mom looked forward to every anniversary that your dad would invite her for a seaside date, but who could have imagined it would come to this? Grandma spoke with a hint of loneliness in her voice. Then, with a quiet yet strong voice, she reassured me, "Don't worry, I'm here for you." That's how she encouraged me. Grandma lived alone. The house, frankly, couldn't be called pretty. It was a rundown apartment. "I'm sorry for such a modest home. We're not well off." That was often followed by an apology. But I loved living with Grandma so much that it never bothered me, and I'd say, "I don't mind at all. Please don't apologize." I always tried to respond in a way that wouldn't make her worry, and kept a smile on my face. Being poor didn't bother me. I was determined to make it through. As long as I had my dear grandma, who was always there to encourage me, I felt like I could handle anything. I wouldn't be beaten. That alone gave me the confidence to keep living. I studied hard to make grandma proud. Thanks to that, my grades improved rapidly, and by the time I was in the first year of middle school, I was at the top of my class. This drew a lot of attention at the school, but not everyone thought well of it. "It's Kyle from my class. Hey, I heard you're living with your poor granny. That's why her clothes are always so tattered." "Huh?" Kyle said, and his cronies laughed uproariously. "My clothes are hand-me-downs from a neighbor who graduated, and it's true that it might not be the best. But it's something my grandma got for me by humbling herself and asking for it." I couldn't stand them laughing at such a treasured clothes, yet I was too frustrated to talk back. Our house walls are thin, so I didn't want grandma to hear me crying. When I was alone at home, I cried quietly. Keeping quiet, I feared I'd just sink into worse thoughts, so I helped my grandma more actively. Once a month, I'd take her to the seniors' meeting held nearby, or accompany her to the doctor's. She had bad legs, and having even one person for support seemed to help. She'd always say thank you, but I was too embarrassed by my adolescence. I could never respond properly, just gave a sheepish smile. But her words always lifted my spirits. Having suddenly become her adoptee, I was always worried about being a burden, so being able to help felt incredibly good. I went to a public high school because the tuition was affordable. I worked part-time at night to help with the living expenses. I'd always helped out, but being able to contribute directly to our finances eased some of my worry about being a burden. Of course, I kept up with my studies, worked hard for my university entrance exams, and got into my first choice, a national university. I received a grant scholarship, which allowed me to study without taking on debt. My friends hear a lot of bragging from me. I always tell them, my grandson is just the cutest and such a hard worker. Grandma told me this with such joy, time and time again. Knowing she praised me even when I wasn't around made me so happy that I threw myself into my university studies with even more zest. I enjoyed learning French the most, as I was thinking about what I could do something with it. The doctor we often visited at the hospital suggested if I want to do volunteering work. It was a simple gig, interpreting for those who needed it. Of course, I said yes. The days were tough, but I remember them as some of the most fulfilling ones I've had. And then, it was time for job hunting. I applied to several companies but kept getting rejected after the interviews. It was during this time, at a job fair, when I was stopped by a voice I recognized. "Hey, is that you, Charlie?" Charlie, right. I couldn't forget him. Kyle, the unpleasant guy from my elementary and middle school days, was right there in front of me. "Why are you here?" "I'm job hunting too. Came to listen in. I'm interested in this industry." "You're here to listen as well, aren't you? Well, I bet the company I land a job at will be much better, with that shabby suit you're wearing, looking like a hand-me-down. I doubt you'll get through anywhere." Kyle laughed in that same mocking way he used to. "You don't know that." I was able to talk back this time, something I couldn't do before, but he just said, "Look at you talking back. You've gotten pretty bold," and sneered sarcastically. Nothing seemed to have changed about him. As luck would have it, I kept running into Kyle at the booths thereafter. Every time was an unpleasant experience with his teasing. To think I'd still have to put up with this as an adult. As I walked home feeling frustrated, "Charlie, what's wrong? You seem down." Grandma was there to welcome me with a worried look. "No, it's nothing. Just got a bit tired from listening to all the company presentations." I managed a smile to cover it up. Then, Grandma brought out some delicious-looking dishes from the kitchen. This is beef stew. I got it from a seniors gathering and it was so good. I wanted you to try it, so I asked for the recipe. You've always loved it since you were little. Eating something you like might cheer you up. You've been having fast food too much lately. You should have some homemade meals once in a while. She said this as she served me salad and bread too. Maybe because I've lived with Grandma, I always loved homemade cuisine. Thank you. Today's meal looked incredibly delicious. I took my time enjoying the taste of a home-cooked meal after so long. Once I leave this house, I might not get to enjoy this kind of homemade food again. That thought crossed my mind. If I get a job, I plan to live on my own. Somehow, these ordinary days felt irreplaceable. I wondered what Grandma would do without me. Will I be comfortable on my own? Or perhaps, will she feel lonely? Her bad legs make going out a struggle, I wonder. It might even become difficult to attend the seniors club meetings she looks forward to. Various thoughts raced through my mind, and before I noticed, I was tearing up. What's wrong? You look so tired. Are you okay? Realizing I had caused concern, I hurriedly replied. I'm fine now. I got to eat Grandma's cooking after a long while. It really cheered me up. There's nothing like home cooking. I've been so busy lately, often just grabbing some fast food, but I'll make sure we have meals together like this more often. Can I ask you to make stew again sometime? Hearing this, Grandma seemed a little relieved. Of course, nothing makes me happier than seeing you enjoy my food. Take care of yourself and keep at it. Thanks to Grandma's kindness, I felt a bit better. The job hunting continued, with interviews day in and day out, and I often bumped into Kyle. He always had something to say, but I tried my best not to let it bother me. On the day I finished an interview at my first choice company, I ran into him again. Still hadn't got an offer. That's pitiful. Kyle said with a sneer. I figured he was in the same boat with job hunting, but I didn't want to engage in a pointless argument, so I decided to just leave without a word. But Kyle seemed to enjoy provoking me and kept going. Still living with your poor grandma, even with her around, she must not be much help, just eating up your money. That was too much for me to bear. Cut it out. She's the one who raised me. There's no way I'd think of her like that. I raised my voice, something I rarely do, and Kyle seemed taken aback for a moment. But he didn't back down and pressed on. Come on, admit it. Deep down you must think she's a burden. I was shaking with anger. Well, anyway, you'll fail today's interview, and I'll pass. Your suit looks cheap, and you lack any real charm. No decent company would take you. You're better off mowing lawns. That would suit you and your poor grandma. As Kyle made his declaration, a voice suddenly challenged. Is that really what you believe? From behind the interview room, an elderly gentleman in a black suit emerged. He looked to be in his 70s with his gray hair. I had a feeling I'd seen him somewhere before. Ah, you are. That's right. I remember now. That face, I've seen it on the company's website. He was the CEO of the company. I heard that whole conversation. You seem to be making quite light of the elderly lady, huh? While giving Kyle a stern look, the CEO said. No, I mean. Kyle was flustered, but the CEO didn't listen. I've heard about how Charlie has lived since he was a child. I understand he cherishes the grandmother he lives with very much, and yet, you spoke quite harshly about her. At the CEO's words, Kyle was trembling. Even with a quick glance, I could see he was sweating bullets. Curiously, I asked the CEO a question. How come you know about me? Well, I happen to know your grandmother, Harriet. I enjoy conversing with people, and often participate in the seniors gatherings, where I became friendly with her after our chats. Who would have thought the CEO was connected to my grandma? I was totally blown away by this unexpected turn of events. I'm well aware of the support you've given to Harriet with her bad legs. She always talks about you. She talks to everyone that she's got a grandson to be proud of, who never gets discouraged despite the tough times, always has a smile on his face, takes on lots of part-time jobs to help out with her finances, and studies hard too. Is that so? I had no idea. Learning how highly my grandma spoke of me was both heartwarming and embarrassing. I almost felt like crying. Kyle, seeming out of place, didn't say a word and started to leave the scene. As for the interview results, Kyle, you're not hired. Charlie, you're hired. Kyle flinched at the CEO's voice. Does that mean it's because I badmouthed Charlie? Kyle looked like he was about to cry. It's more about the difference in skills. The universities you guys graduated from were almost at the same level. However, Charlie can speak advanced French. He even has experience as a medical interpreter, albeit as a volunteer. Our company is currently looking for someone who can do medical interpretation, and Charlie fits the bill perfectly. I was moved that the CEO knew even about the volunteering. In comparison, Kyle, it seems you have a French qualification, but that's just for tests. Do you actually speak it? We have plenty of people who speak French. Unless you have knowledge about medical or pharmaceutical stuff, to be honest, it's going to be tough. That's why, quite simply, you don't stand out. Sorry, but you'll have to look elsewhere. Having been told this straight by the CEO, Kyle slumped to the ground. Charlie, I'd really like you to shine with us. Yes. Thank you so much. I felt rewarded for all my hard work and was happy. I went straight home and told my grandma. My goodness, congratulations. And to think you went for an interview at Shane's company. I'm surprised but so happy. Grandma was delighted as if it were her own joy. When I asked, it turned out she had known the CEO for a long time. I've known Shane at the seniors club since you started living here. We still get together to play cards, have tea, and enjoy each other's company. I knew he was a CEO but had no idea it was of such a large company. Grandma was so surprised that she said she would call the CEO. The CEO of my first choice company was an old friend of my grandma's, which felt kind of strange. After making the call and confirming it was true, she chatted for a bit and handed the phone to me before handing. Charlie, it was nice to talk with you today. Thank you too. It feels kind of strange, doesn't it? Just a moment ago, we met as the CEO and a job seeker. True. I'd like to also get along as Harriet's friend from now on. How about dinner, the three of us, sometime? I was a bit surprised by the invitation. I wondered if it would be okay to have dinner with the CEO. I was at a loss for words on how to respond when I was told, please switch with Harriet, so she took over. Upon hearing the CEO's suggestion, Grandma immediately agreed. That sounds lovely. Let's definitely have a meal together, and quickly set a date. Honestly, I was confused, but seeing how delighted Grandma was, I thought, well, why not? The following week, we had dinner as promised. It was a typical family restaurant, the kind you wouldn't expect the CEO of a big corporation to visit. Are you sure this place is okay? Maybe somewhere more upscale, or maybe you're just being considerate of us. But the CEO shook his head. I'm a self-made man, so I prefer to live a down-to-earth life, the CEO replied with a smile. Fancy places just don't sit well with me, so I often come to this restaurant. Since I'm a regular customer, all the waitstaff know me by face. The CEO's words, spoken with a warm smile, seemed to be genuinely true. Every time the waiters came to the table, they spoke to the CEO. Watching this, I started to relax. The three of us ordered the steaks that the CEO recommended, chatting and eating until we were completely stuffed. Having the meals with the three of us turned out to be more delicious than I expected. While Grandma went to the restroom, I escorted her to the hallway. Upon returning to our table, the CEO struck up a conversation. Actually, I would like to go out with Harriet, he confessed. It might seem strange at my age, But I'm serious. I've been alone since my wife passed away 10 years ago. Embarrassingly, I'm a bit stubborn and occasionally get into arguments, but Harriet always treats me with kindness. If I've had a falling out with my friends, she mediates and helps us reconcile. I've never met anyone like her. So, if I have your blessing, Charlie, like a son to me, I'd like to confess my feelings. What do you think? I smiled quietly and nodded at the nervous-looking CO. Of course, I'm all for it. And before I could finish, we heard "So that's how it is." Turning around, Grandma was there. A staff member had brought her back to the table. I hadn't noticed at all. I wonder how much she heard. I would be so happy to be with you. And Charlie agrees. Please take care of me. With those words, Grandma was in tears. Though they never officially married, they've been living together. Their home is surprisingly modest for CEOs, but seeing Grandma so happy makes me very glad. We still frequently go to that family restaurant for meals. My job is going well too, as a corporate interpreter. I'm heading off to another day at the job, and seeing Grandma's happy face motivates me to keep up the good work.